Jeff Rosenstock, SKrAm album review. Let's chat about it. Hey guys, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning here tonight to chat about this new Jeff Rosenstock album. It is a reworking of his fantastic album that he released last year, No Dream, but it is a complete ska re-recording. Okay. If you don't know him, Jeff Rosenstock, a Long Island legend of modern pop punk and other genres as well, former frontman of bands like Bomb the Music Industry and Arrogant Sons of Bitches. He also just happens to be one of my all-time favorite songwriters. Now, at first, when he branched out on his own, like, he was releasing the I Look Like Shit mixtape and everything, I don't know, some of his stuff rubbed me the wrong way. I really wasn't expecting to love a lot of his solo stuff, but around the times of We Cool and Worry, Jeff reworked himself, reintroduced himself to us as this modern slacker king of pop punk. He was ruling over the pop punk genre at the time, blending in elements of indie rock and emo and some folk punk, and if you listened to Worry, you heard a lot more as well, from hardcore to ska to so much more. Now, around the time of his post-album, Jeff was writing some of his catchiest stuff to date with a real call to action as well. And it did, over time, kind of lessen on me, mostly because it lacked the spontaneity of his last two albums. They just seemed so easy to dive into, were so fun and eclectic. I didn't get that as post, but you know what? It's still a great album. And you know what? He bounced back super hard last year with No Dream, and honestly, it's one of my biggest regrets of the year giving it the score that it did, because all it did throughout the rest of the year was grow on me. It is a catchy, paranoid masterpiece. It is nothing short of a catchy, caffeinated, real paranoid listen, but a fantastic one at that. But of course, this is Jeff Rosenstock we're talking about. He never sleeps, the guy, and he has returned less than a year later with a complete reimagining of his last album in full ska recording. And honestly, that shocked me, and this album shocked me. Not for the reason you might think, though. I mean, the fact that Jeff is putting out a ska album in 2021, that's not too wild to think about. Between his former acts like Bomb the Music Industry and Arrogant Sons of Bitches, he is no stranger to ska and folk punk and a whole lot of other genres, too. That's not what shocked me about this album. What shocked me is just how well these very paranoid, neurotic tracks sort of transferred over to this ska sound. The album starts off with No Time To Skank, the original version of this track, at 52 seconds, being one of my favorite tracks on his No Dream album. And honestly, this track is nothing different. This track is an absolute blast from start to finish, and nothing is really lost from one track to this new version. It's still very caffeinated, still very paranoid, but it's also very bright and very fun. And because Jeff has so much experience in these genres, it comes off really fluently. And that last little intense passage that we get towards the end that's kind of, I don't know, like hardcore inspired is really great as well. I want to hear more of that. Most of this album, I'll be honest, doesn't have as much, it doesn't really have the right working as much as it does. Airwalks also really works a lot as well. It's just as sunny, it's just as bright, and it's just as fun. And even more importantly, hearing this new version has made me go back and reappreciate the last year's version just as much. SKrAm, on the other hand, did give me some reservations. Spoiler alert, at some of the sort of two-tone reggae-tinged ska tracks on this album that are my least favorite here. That's just me. But this track, honestly, is great. It has just enough of a bite that it really reels me in, and yet again, it makes me go back and really rethink about and reappreciate everything on No Dream. Also, that spoken word portion, I don't know what that is or where it came from, but it works. Once again, the wilder, more hardcore-inspired moments towards the end, I think Jeff is really onto something there. I'd love to hear more of that. And as far as just a track that went above and beyond here goes, as far as a favorite track of mine, I think Hornline is my favorite. Originally, State Line was my favorite track on No Dream, and this is just as good. I love it how dreary and hazy and laid back this is. It ends up being even more emotional and more heartfelt than it was originally. Jeff's performance here is stellar. I love this. Now, I have two major issues with this album. Actually, three. If you didn't like this album to begin with, this new recording is probably not going to completely wow you. You might like this a little bit better, but I don't think it's going to completely change your thoughts on everything. 2, the sound that Jeff has on this album is not entirely revolutionary. It's not like Jeff is spiraling the sound of ska into 2021 and 2022. Matter of fact, he's kind of just, bringing it up to speed a little bit. But my biggest issue here is that some of the more two-tone and reggae-infused ska tracks here are some of the weakest of the bunch. Ska Dream is one of the weakest tracks here. And you know what? Hearing how anthemic and sunny this intro was, I thought it was going to be a knockout. The fact of the matter is, though, it's a little clumsy for my liking. So much of this album is just a fresh take on the songs that Jeff wrote last year. Not only that, but just, a fresh take on ska for right now. Maybe not revolutionary, but it's, fresh. But this sounds kind of dated. And Pick It Up is easily my least favorite track here. Come on, this is not cutting it for me. This one just plods along so slowly, and as far as a track that really loses some luster going from the No Dream recording to this re-recording, it's gotta be this one. This at first was such a sharp, really well-focused statement. This just sounds half-baked. Even Laura Stevenson's verse here, even though she's worked with Jeff so much in the past, she just doesn't sound very, up to snuff here. I don't know, I just feel like this track is kind of obnoxious. And the Rudy of Breathing isn't that much better. This one's just way too breezy and ineffective for my liking. I don't know, I need a little bit more of a punch. And lyrically, I just feel like this just doesn't hold up as well. That's just me, though. You might love this thing from start to finish. I mean, as far as the rest of this album goes, I feel like Jeff has kind of reached peak Rosenstock and really made this work probably a lot more than it should. Leave It in the Ska is another personal favorite of mine here. Jeff just sounds like such a professional here. He sounds like he stepped into the recording studio on this, just took one fantastic take and just nailed it. It's just the right amount of punchy, energy here, but it's also super colorful and fun. It's something that probably shouldn't work. A lot of this album probably shouldn't, but it does, and it's a lot of fun. Old SKrAp, on the other hand, is completely full of life, really fiery. It's got a great groove to it. You can get up and move around, but it also has some heavier portions, too. And I think one of the best things about this track is Jeff really gets a couple of minutes to shine here. His vocals are some of his most passionate on this entire album. I feel like there's a level of ballsiness with this album. I mean, Jeff went headfirst into this in 2021. This sound, this level of ska hasn't been, in the mainstream for so many years, but he just went full into it. And, I applaud that as it is, but he also does it with just such an appreciation and a love for this that I can't help but have a big smile on my face with this. Monday at Back to the Beach, on the other hand, is just the weird twist I needed right now. This is a hazy, synth-fueled ska jam, which, once again, doesn't sound like it should work, but it does. And Checkerboard Ashtray is just a fantastic deep cut. This one has some bite to it. It's also just this great blast of colorful energy, albeit that color is a checkerboard. I'm still shocked, even though we're late into the album by now, at just how many of these tracks carry over from the paranoid, intense No Dream from last year. But it's making me go back and revisit that and find a new, greater love for that. Once again, you can argue that Jeff, maybe might not be doing anything too wildly revolutionary with the sounds of this album, but he does it with a love and appreciation for ska that I can't help but, really enjoy this. And Ohio Porkpie as a finale did worry me because Ohio Turnpike was one of my least favorite tracks on No Dream. Mostly because I didn't like the musical direction of it. But with this ska twist, I think that I can really appreciate it a lot more than I did originally. It's got some real bite to it. It feels like a proper ending, a pretty epic one as well. So like I said, this album is a very solid re-recording that's pretty shocking, but not for the reasons you might think. He's taken the themes, the lyrical themes and the feelings of his No Dream album and reinvented it in this colorful, skankable ska world. And a lot of it shouldn't work. I mean, No Dream was caffeinated and paranoid and wildly neurotic at times. SKrAm is none of that, but it does work. And you know what? No, this is not the most revolutionary sound. Jeff Rosenstock didn't just casually throw ska into the mix for years to come. I don't think that that's the case. Not only that, but if you didn't like what Jeff was doing in the past, this may not be the one that wins you over either. But for me, I think this is pretty much on par with No Dream from last year. So I'm going to give it the same exact rating that I gave No Dream. I'm feeling a very, very strong 7 on this album, but let me know what you guys think down below. If you like the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, guys.